Hello and welcome to 100 Yards of Football, Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and coming to speak to us about Rashad Weaver, the defensive lineman out of the Pittsburgh Panthers, is the man himself, the football encyclopedia, Mr. Vincent Turner. How's it going, Mr. Turner?
How you doing this morning, sir?
Man, I am doing fantastic. I am loving talking about these draft profiles. We just had a couple of really great ones earlier today with Mr. Logan Landers, and it's got me all fired up for this draft, which is coming up pretty soon. So we want to get as many of these amazing draft profiles in now so that we can see if we were right when they get drafted. So everybody watching, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the video, and make sure you go over and listen to our podcast, and make sure you subscribe to that podcast as well, 100 Yards of Football. But without further ado, Mr. Turner, please tell us, Rashad Weaver, what's going on with this man, and what are his prospects for the draft?
What I like about this young man, Mr. Weaver, again, he's a very underrated prospect, and we've had a lot of underrated prospects that we've done over the past few weeks. And I think when you look overall in this 2021 NFL draft, I like this young man specifically. Not only I think he's underrated, even though he came back in 2020 and had an outstanding season, was a first team All-American. But what I like about him, I describe him as a young man that's bounced back from adversity, hard worker, and determination. In 2018, this young man was on the verge of being one of the best defensive players to play college football at the University of Pittsburgh. He had an outstanding season in 2018 where he had 47 tackles. He had 14 tackles for losses. He had 6 sacks. Coming into 2019, every publication, everything about the ACC had him as a first-team player. But he had a torn ACL to open the preseason and missed all of 2019. So what he did, he came back in 2020, and coming off that ACL, there was a lot of people didn't think what type of player he would be. But boy, in 9 games, he came back and put everybody on notice. He had 35 tackles, 14 tackles for losses, 7.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. So he proved to me, not only as a football player, but a young man that can battle through adversity. He had determination, he had effort, because he had a serious torn ACL. But the most thing I like about Mr. Weaver, we all talk about these great prospects from their skill level to ability to make plays at the next level. But the guy is now a 4-time All-American, graduated with his degree from the University of Pittsburgh, and he's in the grad school right now. So this is a young man that is a complete person, complete football player. Then think about this. He attended the University of Pittsburgh. He turned down Michigan, went to Pitt, and then the language and the legacy that he had to follow at Pitt. Great defensive players has played there. Joe Smith out of University of Pittsburgh, 1952. Randy Holloway, 1977. The young man out of Natchez, Mississippi, was one of the best that ever done it on the college level, Hugh Green. Then the late, great Hall of Famer, Mr. Chris Doman, in 1985, then Tony Woods in 1986, and then at the present time, everybody's saying he's the best defensive tackle in the game, Mr. Aaron Donald. So you can see Mr. Rashad Weaver has followed a lot of great players. Now my grade report on the young man. I like him. The size, A+, 6'4", about 265 pounds. Then I like him with another thing when I'm going to give him a grade report, the length, A+, the ball rush, A+, physical, A+. And this is what I love about him most of all. His motor is always going off the charts, A+. Relentless effort, never giving up the play, A+. Hands, A+, off the charts. Quick first step, off the charts. The point of attack, very solid, A+. And speed to power, A+. Very complete football player. Then when you look at him, and you know how I do it, I compare him to some of the great players that's played on the college level. Lamar London, remember him out of Purdue, played with the Fearsome Foursome, got a little bit of him in him. Then the great Deacon Jones out of Mississippi Valley. I see Rashad Weaver, a lot of him in that. Then Quentin Coples, who came out of North Carolina in 2012, was a pretty good defensive end in the ACC. Then the boys down there Roll Tide. Mr. Weaver's got a lot of characteristics with them. Remember Wayne Hamilton, all SEC in 1979. Eric Curry and John Copeland on the national championship team. Then Mr. Weaver, when I'm talking about determination, battling adversity, he reminds me a lot. And I didn't see this guy play. I just done a lot of reading on him. Boy, he's got that pop to him like the great Willie Davis. that came out of Grambling in 1955, played with the great Eddie Robinson, was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. But his game didn't go to another level until he got under the great one, Vince Lombardi. Boy, Rashad Weaver's got a lot of Willie Davis in him. Then finally, another guy, Richard Tombstone Jackson, that went to Southern University. They played with the Denver Broncos. Relentless. Mr. Jackson was uncanny. And finally, another guy that he reminds me of, Verlin Briggs. Great defensive end that played with the New York Jets. They won the Super Bowl III. Another great player out of Jackson State. This young man, Rashad Weaver, is a complete football player. Then, as I always do with the production off the charts, in his career, 35 games, 110 tackles, 34 tackles for loss, and 17.5 for sacks. So that's telling me right there, he's a guy that's going to come to training camp from day one, and he's going to put the work in. And the final key statistic, in 2020, he had 48 quarterback pressures on 308 pass rushing snaps. Do you know how much pressure that's got to be? That tells me that's a football player that's coming every play and not giving up on the play. Look at his game film. Syracuse in 2020, 7 tackles, 2 sacks. But his best game film might have been against the team that had the best player who's going to go number 1 overall, Trevor Lawrence. Clemson. He had 5 tackles in the game. He had 2 sacks of Trevor Lawrence, and he was bringing it. So this guy right here, Rashad Weaver, I'm very excited about him. And I think at the next level, he's going to be a complete football player. And not only the young man is a complete football player in his battle through adversity. Remember what I said earlier. He has his degree. He graduated with academic honors. He's working on his master's. And, man, when you're talking about complete, hey, man, a very complete football player. And not only that, he's a good-looking guy because I'm going to call him the Rick Fox of the 2021 NFL Draft.
Okay. I am so with that. You come back with that kind of information and like, woo, boy. So, like, tell me this. What are his keys to getting drafted? Like, what's the big thing he needs to do to show out and really get that attention he needs?
I think one thing about this football player, we didn't talk about all great players. We talk about all their skill sets, what they can do. But what I like about this young man, it's something my business partner, who I love to death, you know I'm talking about, Ronnie Keebler, always says, out of Brooklyn, New York. Give him a shout out this morning. Your actions speak louder than your words. Look at the game film of him against Syracuse and Clemson, even Miami. Look at the whole game film of 2020. The guy came out off a torn ACL in 2019. He was one of the top defensive prospects in the country, but he had to go a whole year to really rehab that injury. Then he comes back in a pandemic season. In 9 games, he put up numbers. You see what I'm saying? 35 tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. But what separates me, and that's a good question you asked me this morning, Mr. Jeremiah, is that what makes him different? It's the effort, the mortar. Every play, he's coming. He's hustling. And we can sit up here all day and talk about these great athletes and talk about, hey, they can make all the great throws. They can make all the great runs. They're 3 technique. They're 5 technique. But the bottom line, when you watch Rashad Weaver, he's a guy that doesn't never give up the play. He's always at a high mortar off the charts. And when you got that type of ability, hey, man, you're going to make it at the high level. I look at the young man flying up the charts in the next 2 weeks simply because when you turn on the game film, we could talk about the swing and move. We could talk about him getting into the defensive line, in the offensive lineman. But the bottom line, he's the guy that's coming every play. Every play. You know, back in the day when we used to be in junior high and you had this bully. Yeah. And every day he'll try to take your money, but you know he coming. He coming like the Warriors. Warriors, come out to play. Same thing. Hey, I'm coming to take your money. And that's a job that you have to be prepared for every day. This is a complete football player, man. And I'm not even talking about his skills on the field. I like him because he graduated with honors of 3.65 at Pitt. in grad school, one of the top scholar athletes that's been through the University of Pittsburgh. And then think about the school that's been there. All the great players, Dan Marino, Mike Ditka. I don't have to say more. Dave Winstead. The bottom line, he was an academic All-American. And even during his time when he was down in 2019, he still handled his business. And if I could take one thing from Rashad Weaver, he might be the most mature football player going into the 2021 NFL draft. And kudos to his high school, Cooper City, down there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I know Bobby Butler liked that for me saying that today.
Yes, sir. Well, everybody watching, make sure you tell us, what do you think? Where do you think that Rashad Weaver will get drafted? And what do you think about, all of our draft previews? We want to hear from you because we do these draft previews to make sure you have all the great sports information up to date that you need to decide your fantasy teams, to decide who you're going to bet on, to decide, who you should really keep your eye on. And if you have favorite teams, you want to know who's coming at you. You want to know which teams have got these great players who are coming up and coming at them. So thank you so much for watching. And please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the video. And if you are listening to us on our podcast, then thank you so much. But if you haven't joined us on our podcast yet, it's time. Go to anywhere that you listen to podcasts and look up 100 Yards of Football. We're over on Spotify. We're over on Apple Podcasts and anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. Well, for the entire team here at 100 Yards of Football, I'm Jeremiah Long, the producer, and we've been talking with our amazing host, the football encyclopedia himself, Mr. Vincent Turner, about Rashad Weaver, who is a defensive lineman out of Pittsburgh Panthers. And I'm just excited to keep doing these. Mr. Vincent Turner, will you take us out?
Well, like I said, you know what I always do. I'm a big-time musical guy. I'm going to go to the young man that was the lead singer of the time, by the name of Morris Day. When he went solo, he had an album. He had a song called Color of Success. And one of the lyrics he had on there, I play to win. Mr. Rashad Weaver, I already showed you he's going to play to win in the 2021 NFL draft. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful day along with you, Mr. Long.
Yes,
and
sir.
It's almost 3 weeks, baby, because the draft is coming. Warriors, come out to play.